There are a lot of people talking.
I don't know, I had to fill in at the traffic commission at 5:30, so I missed most of the session of protection.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, welcome to the Monday, February 27th meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission. What's your pleasure regarding the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to approve. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Communications, none. Old business, item number 1, consideration with possible action on the request to amend the Green Bay zoning code to permit rooftop signage at the Johnsonville Tailgate Village at Lanville Field, located at 1940 South Oneida Street, submitted by Jerry Hansen, Staff Counsel, Green Bay Packers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This request was before the Plan Commission at our last Plan Commission meeting, and this is a text amendment for potential rooftop signage for the Tailgate Village, which is generally located in this area along South Oneida Street on the Lanville Field campus. As we left the meeting last time, we were kind of crafting some language on the fly. We tried to summarize that through the city attorney with this language here that's included within your agenda. Signage for sports stadiums with seating capacity over 10,000 other than provided in Table 20-4 shall be established through development of a master plan. However, we left the language at the meeting. There's some alternative language that was provided by the applicant between the two meetings recently. Staff cannot support either one of these languages. We feel there's not really a quantifiable mechanism here that talks about size or placement or location of those signs. So we cannot support the request. We have indicated that to the applicant. We've talked about other options like planning and development. That really hasn't been a great option either. Recently, we've suggested the Board of Appeals that may be an issue or an opportunity to seek a dimensional variance for the vertical elevation of the sign. So tonight, we're not supporting the request, and we're actually recommending denial of the request as requested.
Now, do we need to actually deny it, or can we recommend that it goes to the Board of Appeals?
You could suggest that, I suppose, if you wanted to. I think you'd want to take action on this request individually.
I think, if you're, I think staff's recommendation, to go through the Board of Appeals for a variance. If you wanted to see how that played out, I think you could also hold it and say, when's the next BOA meeting?
The 20th of March.
And you would have to hold it for a month until then and see how the BOA goes, and then depending on that, if it gets accepted, you could still approve it, I guess, but, you can see how that played out first. That's an alternative
Right.
as well.
Okay.
We suggested to the applicant that they go to the Board of Appeals. The applicant wished to come tonight to the Plan Commission, so it's a request to speak before the Plan Commission.
Okay. Now, is there anything in the works to possibly work on a different district for this type of an entertainment usage?
So we've had discussions about, I think, a long-term vision for crafting some type of zoning that encompasses the unique nature of the beast that is Lambeau Field. And in doing so, one of the mechanisms we have is doing a planned unit development. With that, I think there's a lot that goes into it in an interest of, expediency. I don't think we're gonna come up with a PUD in a month. And I won't speak for the applicant or staff, but that's a heavy load just given, all the intricacies of it. And I think there's gonna be a lot of back and forth of, the balance of, from a city perspective, of being able to guide development. In the same respect, the applicant, looking for some assurances or some guidance on their part, so they're not coming back here all the time that, all right, they kind of know what's in their right, by right they can do these things, and then we'll have to come back. So with that, we've had that discussion, but I think in terms of, for them needing an answer on the sign, they need that in a few weeks, not in a few months. So, regardless of how Plan Commission decides to act on this item, I think we've discussed, with the applicant, with Mr. Hansen, with other Packard staff about just the long-term plan or opportunities for doing that. That's just going to take a little more time.
Thank you. Are there questions for Paul or Kevin? We do have Jerry Hansen here. Can someone suspend the rules, please?
So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice seeing everybody again. So I thought about the zoning planning board of appeals. I guess it makes a whole lot more sense that we just handle it now, and I'll explain my reasons why. So the basic difference between what's up there on the board, what's suggested, which is not acceptable, either one of those versions to the planning, is the master plan versus just, look, Packers bringing a site plan. We've got site plans for tons of stuff over there. There's a site plan for Lambeau Field, there's a site plan when we redid the Bellin entrance, there's a site plan when we did the south end zone, there's a site plan when we expanded the football facilities, there's a site plan for the United Stairs, there's a site, anything we do over there, there's a site plan for, okay? And I'm looking at the site plan ordinance, sorry about that. Sure, you guys. And I'm looking at the site plan ordinance, and look, it's applicable to any new construction. I've highlighted some things here. It's applicable to remodeling. It's applicable to an exchange or an expansion of use. And then the items that you look at are down below in that 13-803. You look at the topography, you look at the right-of-way, you look at the parking, you look at the building and structures. You look at the loading docks. Going on to the next page, you look at the signage, the lighting, the fences. You look at all this stuff. You look at the stormwater, which is, well, we've got a site plan over there for the stormwater stuff. That big swimming pool underneath the parking lot that we put in this last year. So there's been all kinds of projects within the last 5 years on this thing. And then K kind of picks up anything else, any other information deemed necessary by the zoning administrator. So then it goes through a community development review team, the CDRT. And then under 13-804, you're talking about changes to the approved site plan, and any changes have to get reviewed, okay, and approved. Minor changes don't have to come back here. Anything that the planning staff considers substantive has to come back here, okay? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that each time we do something, especially with the signage, that we gotta do one thing here and then go to the zoning planning board of appeals on signage. Now here's table 20-4. This is the one we're having issues with. And please remember that the issue we've got here, this whole thing would have been approved back in December, okay? But for the rooftop sign. And if we put a note in here, that's going to take care of it, all in one fell swoop. I don't have to run to here and to the zoning and planning board of appeals, okay? It's a conceptual difference in my mind. And as far as a PUD or a master plan, again, the Packer stance would be, this is a minimalist approach, okay? For the Tailgate Village, what happened procedurally is a site plan was submitted to planning. We had, with Stu and then me, 3-4 meetings on this thing, talked about all kinds of things. Where the loading dock was gonna go, what was the facade on Oneida Street. I mean, tons of issues got talked about. So conceptually, it doesn't make any sense to me that you're gonna make me jump through the hoops to go here for the site plan, and then because of the signage, which Lambeau Field's got all kinds of issues with this signage issue. So if we look at the table 20-4, freestanding, so we look at the rooftop, so that's a problem. Maximum sign attached to the maximum area sign, 400 square feet, that's a problem. Based on the current signage that's there. The freestanding signage, 300 square feet, that's a problem. We got 2 marquee signs, 1 marquee sign came down with this project. The maximum number of signs, so just looking at all these maximum numbers, maximum height, minimum clearance, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but we've got, if you look at Lambeau Field and you look at table 20-4, we've got all kinds of issues over there. But that doesn't mean we're trying to put something past you that says it's not going to look right. And in this case, we have a difference of opinion. I don't know that we even have a difference of opinion. We have an ordinance or a table sitting in the way of what should have been approved back in December. Okay, that's what we've got here. Okay, so why, I don't see the heartburn on throwing a note in this table on signage. Okay? Go ahead, look like.
Similar to what we discussed last time? Are you talking about where in, underneath the notes?
Correct, so underneath the note, if we put in that language, if the language goes in signage not otherwise permitted, if it's on stadiums having a seating capacity in excess of 10,000 or a related accessory building, in either case as approved by the applicable site plan. And then, even to bring it home further, so this is a picture, I've only got one copy, just pass it around. So the Tundra tailgate zone there were 2 buildings here since 2009. There were 2 buildings here. Each time we did one of these buildings, or even a temporary building, we submitted a site plan. Okay, this was last year's. And then there's, 7 other ones just like this. So even on the temporary stuff, you got site plans. And so you've got 2 buildings here prior to from 2009 to 2012, there were 2 buildings there. And then in 2013, the building got moved, or the temporary tent got moved to the spot where it is currently, and then now the permanent building is going to go up. So there was signage on that building also. And from 2009 from 2009 to 2012, there was 483 square feet of signage on those, each side of those buildings, those 2. And then from 2013, there was 241 square feet. So again, I'm just trying to emphasize, look, these things are reviewed like crazy. It's not like we're in a vacuum here. We bring the stuff to the city. It makes sense to us, and we certainly can have a difference of opinion, but don't send me down a route of just because that table is in the way, I gotta get something approved here, and then I gotta jump to the Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals. Conceptually, that doesn't make sense to me, and that's why I'm asking for the note in this section. And the note really only applies to signage. So.
Yes. Vice Chair.
A little bit of clarification, you said
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense to get it approved here and then have to go down to the Board of Appeals.
Correct.
And that's not how it would work. If you get it approved here, that'd be it.
Correct. If the note was in here, if I got it
Because-
approved here, that would be it. Correct.
This body, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, or Paul, but this body will change or alter the zoning code in some form or fashion.
Correct.
Where the Board of Appeals deals with granting variances to the existing zoning code. Is that basically correct?
Correct. Correct.
So if you succeeded in getting the zoning code changed or altered here, then that'd be it.
Correct, then I come back here,
If we
site,
decided not to change or alter the zoning code, then you'd have to go to the Board of Appeals to get a variance to the existing code.
correct.
So there's a subtle difference.
Correct, and but what's happening, okay, so, but at the zoning plan board of appeals, as you know, I'm supposed to show hardship, okay?
Yes.
Well, sure, they've passed it in the past, and they keep passing it, but really, and basically those applications are, well, the place is so unique, so therefore, please allow it. Well, that really doesn't work so well either.
Then
Sure.
you might not.
Sure. Yeah, all I'm saying is, I'd prefer to have one stop versus two each time. And I'm not sure if I'm answering it correctly, Tim, because I'd have to come back here for approval of some site plan stuff if there was,
And that's gonna be the case no matter what. The site
right, I
plan-
have to come back here, but then if it's a signage issue and we've put some other sign on there, what I'm hearing is, I've also always got to go back to the zoning plan. I'd like to remove that step, because it really, again, that one, because of the uniqueness of Lambeau Field, doesn't work well. I can do it, but again, conceptually, it doesn't work well.
Commissioner Hanson?
I guess my question isn't so much for Mr. Hanson, but can I ask a question of Ms. Chavez?
Yes.
What's wrong with the language here? Is there, there's an issue because we don't like it. Why don't we like it?
So the first thing, the top language is actually the language that I proposed. It was based off of what was presented by the commission at the last meeting. The problem with it is still that it opens the door. So what you'll notice is that when you look at the other footnotes that are in there, it refers to signage in excess. So size-wise, that's greater than what's actually provided for by the zoning code. It allows for it to be established through the master plan. We tried to mimic it, but there was no way to actually allow for something that's not otherwise permitted anywhere in the zoning code, which is rooftop signs. So we had to change it, so we're allowing anything, signage other than is provided for is what we had to do here. So it really does open the door for anything to happen at Lambeau Field instead of having any kind of limitations. The same thing with the second one. I would recommend we go with the top language if we're going to use it, or if we're going to make an amendment. But either one, it's still allowing any changes to the sign code, essentially. It makes the sign code inapplicable to Lambeau.
So basically, it would allow anything at all, and the others limit what's allowed. The other 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in this code allow something different, but they still limit what's allowed.
Correct.
So is there any verbiage that might be able to cover something like rooftop signage is allowed, or?
So the problem is that the sign code specifically says that no rooftop signs are allowed anywhere. And because they're not allowed, we're having to create some kind of an exception to that. The only thing we can think of is to come up with something that says other than is provided. But other than carving out a special exemption for Lambeau, which would be spot zoning, is something we can't do. Really, that's really our only option that I can see.
You know, it seems to me that in our prior discussions that the feeling was that if we do something here, we should make it as narrow of an application as we can. And it seems to me if we tell them go to the Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals, then what happens if a bank or a business of some sort comes in and wants the same thing? We're going to tell them go to the Board of Appeals, and so I'm not sure that the Board of Appeals is really an appropriate way of doing this. You know, in thinking about it, and you know, I don't know exactly what the statutes say on it, but it's kind of like when we give conditional use approval to something. You know, it's a narrow approval that we give to something. and, something being located in a zone where it's not normally allowed, or, whatever it might be. And to me, it's kind of like that, I don't want to get into a case here where we just say rooftop signs are allowed anywhere. Actually, if you look at this, I'm not sure if the sign is even attached to the roof. It's above the roof, but it's kind of on the structure of the building, right?
If you want to say it's not a rooftop sign, if that gets it approved,
I mean,
I'm okay with that too, whatever
talked
gets
about
it
that last
approved.
time.
Make the
I
finials
mean,
on the side just a
let's
little
just-
taller.
let's just talk about semantics. I mean, if this structure went over and was fastened on the side here, on both sides, it would not be a rooftop? I don't know. Mr. Hanson brought up the issue at the last meeting that, what are you telling me? That I gotta build a wall behind that and then it's somehow better. I'm not sure that it is better. It really, I think, I've looked at some rooftop signs that are around our community. Probably our grandfather, there's one on Henry Street at Jones Motors in my district. And, it looks like it was clearly put in as an afterthought. There's a structure behind it that holds it up. But, it doesn't really fit into the architecture very well. There's also a billboard over at Main and Webster on top of that welding shop over there. And that, I think, was probably put in afterwards. Personally, I don't think that it looks bad. I think that, that architecturally it makes some sense. I don't think it's any more cluttered than if you had a wall behind there. So you can call it a wall-mounted sign.
I think we'd still be in trouble with a wall-mounted sign. We'd still need based on the square footage requirements in 24, I think I still have to go get a variance.
You can get a variance.
I mean, that's the problem with that table with Lambeau Field. It doesn't work.
I agree with you, Dave. And I'm okay calling that a structure and part of the building and an architectural structure and not a rooftop, but I know that our discussion last time, it was said that that wasn't the case, but I'm okay calling it that and saying, okay, this sign is okay there. The other part of that, I have another question about that though. With that railing up on top, I know last time you talked about how that fills in the space between those two towers.
Yes.
And
And as you recall, I indicated, this picture is actually, the railing has been taken out. This extra railing, those two pieces are gone. So this is, the latest rendition is just right there in there, okay?
Okay.
So,
And I think even with those two pieces, it's fine with those two pieces. But I wonder if, for now, the signage could be put on the side of the building where the planning department recommends it, but keep the railing up there. And then after the PUD goes through, it would be moved up.
See, the PUD or the master plan, that, because of our belief that there should be minimal regulations, I don't think we're ever gonna get to a PUD or a master plan. That's my, I don't think the two
That-
sides
I
are gonna
understand
meet
that.
with that one. And I think I explained in my memo that the PUD really doesn't work. That's overlay zoning.
Yes, Tim?
I personally, aesthetically, I don't see any problem with having it the way it's shown here. But my main concern is the precedent that was set.
Yep.
The precedent. But I feel that if we did have to use this verbiage, the first verbiage that Vanessa put in there, I could live with that. That would still avoid the precedent part of it. No other building in Green Bay has over 10,000 seating capacity. So it would probably eliminate the precedent-setting problem. I think that's probably the least, or the safest, maybe. If we're gonna okay that, that'd be the route to go, in my opinion.
Well, the only difference, for the most part, the only difference between her language and my language is I rely on the site plans that are submitted, and, Ms. Chavez would rely on the master plan, which I don't think we'll ever get to. I mean, so what you're telling me, if that's the case, then you're telling me go to the zoning planning board of appeals.
If need be, yeah.
Well, yeah,
So I just.
that doesn't take care of the long-term problem.
So, please explain the difference then between the first one and the second one, because what I'm seeing is, in either case, as approved in the applicable site plan is amended from time to time on the bottom one, and the top one is saying, other than as provided for in table 24, shall be established through the development of its master plan. So what is the difference between those two lines?
One's asking for a master plan to be submitted, and one's asking for master plan being a what does the future hold at the site? It's not just what's there currently. The site plans, as I say, we've got,
Just for each thing that goes.
each thing that goes through, and then if you look at that, what makes perfect sense to me, then if you go to the site plan language, the 13-804 paren D, changes to an approved site plan. An approved site plan may not be changed, modified, or altered in any manner without city approval. So if I take my site plan at any given time in the future and I want to change it or amend it, I've got to come back. Okay, I've got to. So I'm just trying to show you you're protected from something that, okay, we got the site plan, so therefore now we can do whatever. Well, we can't. We have to come back if the zoning administrator determines that such changes are minor, then a revised site plan may not be required. Okay, so it's their choice. In all other cases, a revised site plan shall be resubmitted for consideration by the CDRT, the Community Development Review Team. So what I'm saying is, hey, you've got tons of plans on the site, because every time we change any part of Lambeau Field, the Bellin Tower, the south end zone, the suites that went up, the football operation that changed, the stormwater retention pond, every time we do something there, there's a site plan that goes in. And everyone gets to look at it, and we have lots of meetings on it, and we make changes, and it's give and take, it's back and forth, and what's acceptable and what's good for, how do you make it look nice? And part of the issues on this one were, there were some issues with, hey, can you make the side on Oneida look better? Look less like the back end versus street view, which occurred, which, there were several changes to the plans that occurred. And, I mean, there's always discussions on this thing between the two parties.
Thank you. Now, how does the first one help with the master plan rather than site plan?
So the reason we use the master plan instead of just the site plan that was requested is because the language in the table, every single one of those carve-outs actually refers to the master plan. And what we were understanding from that is that the expectation is that there's going to be some long-term planning involved in that. And so when you are actually going through the process of deviating from signage that's otherwise permissible within the city, there's got to be a tighter or higher standard to meet. And so projecting for that long-term planning does that a little bit better than a site plan would.
And does that mean that now if Mr. Hanson brings in a sign in the future, it might end up at the Board of Appeals? I mean, does it make this process any easier to use item number 1?
It makes it more consistent with what we're doing with the rest of the carve-outs. It makes it much more consistent.
Does it help this process at all, though, in terms of having to come in and ask for a different sign? Does it give some wiggle room so that we can say, yes, you can do this sign that looks like it might be a rooftop sign?
I defer to Paul on that.
There really is no quantitative, there's no standards against what our recommendation's been. There's just no way to regulate height, size, placement. The door is too wide open, is our opinion.
On the first bullet
Yeah.
and on the second bullet?
Yeah, the second bullet regarding the site plan, there's a number of zoning districts, and each one has a different standard. They have setbacks, heights, different dimensional requirements. The site plan is a tool or mechanism to enforce those requirements, but not to deviate from those requirements. Those requirements can only be deviated through the Board of Appeals. So the site plan, I don't think is a great option. I would agree with Vanessa that I think the master plan is still an option, but there is no master plan to speak of or to refer to. For example, Bellin Hospital, master plan, PUD, I mean, they've got some further restrictions that were placed on there with oversight by the Planning Commission and Council. I mean, that's a fitting situation because they're much larger, they fit into a small neighborhood. You know, that was the appropriate way to do it. Here, there's no master plan to refer to. There's no other further guidance to provide.
How is this property zoned? Is it institutional, or what is this underlying zone?
Public institutional.
And that, I believe that went into effect in like 2007.
Okay,
So public properties have that designation,
Yeah.
PI district.
all right. Could you establish rules for that particular type of zoning that are different than other types of zoning?
We could, that would take, again, a change. I mean, there are rules and requirements already, but yes, we could look at that, but I think timing-wise, it doesn't seem to work out so well. You know, again, a PUD would be an option, but I don't think there's an opportunity to work out that in a timely fashion.
Yes.
I guess mainly for Paul on this. I'm assuming, it seems that there's been many conversations around this. What is going to be the easiest way to try to get this taken care of out of all this? Because it doesn't seem like this is, I don't like this either in terms of the vagueness of it, but is there a path that's available that makes sense, that would be most likely successful with it? And then I guess kind of second onto that, would there be any language that you would be comfortable with in the table specifically changing it up, allowing roof signs, but then making very, very specific language around that would fit this, but also would be comfortable on staff side, that wouldn't leave the door too open?
I think it'd be difficult to craft language like that, to just leave it for one user. I think it'd be really difficult. Yeah, I don't think we could support a change like that.
I can expand on that. So if we're going to change a sign, the sign code to make rooftop signs permissible, we have to identify which zone is going to fit into. And so that means picking an entire zoning classification. So we could pick the institutional, but then any institutional, anybody that's in that institutional zone will qualify for a rooftop sign automatically.
To your first question, Lambeau Field doesn't meet any requirements, and I can tell from the zoning perspective. So each time there's new structure or signs, they need to go to the Board of Appeals. Typically, that's been the route to get the approval. So again, we're recommending, it's not ideal, but that's the path of least resistance at this point, I feel. But again, there's no guaranteed outcome with that decision as well.
And I guess explain to me again why we can't just go through some kind of a variance for this very specific sign? Is it because it opens the door to others?
Well, rooftop signs are not permitted.
Right.
So that would not be an item that can go to the Board of Appeals. It's more of a use issue almost. However, the applicant could go to the Board of Appeals. There's a limitation on the height that can be extended 18 inches above the roof line. That's a dimensional issue. Take that up with the board as a potential variance.
Again, that sets a precedent. That
Right.
sets a, you're back to, it's Lambeau Field. You make a distinction for Lambeau Field, and, I mean, that's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to put it in a note, not change the rooftop from yes to no, and I'm trying to limit it as best possible, but still allow Lambeau Field to be there and have all the signage that it currently has, that's currently non-conforming to that table 20-4. So if you put the note in based on what the site plan says, we're good to go. We're good to go with now, we're good to go with future stuff, and it's out of, signage is out of whack at Lambeau Field anyway, okay? The height stuff on top of Lambeau Field, on both sides, the wall stuff right on the Bellin side that says Lambeau Field, you get the same type of structure on the top of the building.
Where's that big G? Is that in Ashwaubenon?
That big G is, no, Big G is not in Ashwaubenon. Big G is on the south end zone. Yeah, the big G's there, It just doesn't fit well. And really, I am back to, I think your best alternative is the note going in number 6. And that takes us out of it based on the site plan. They'll come back each time we do a site plan, whether it's a temporary structure, whether it's a full-blown building. It comes back, reviewed by those guys, talked it over with us, and it also cures every time we go to the Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals, that sets a precedent too.
Well, if we denied this, Jerry would still have to go to the Board of Appeals for a variance?
That'd be his next option.
Okay, and if we approve this with the note, like for the first one, the first bullet, you would still have to go to the Board of Appeals for a variance?
I don't believe you would have to, though. I think that gives flexibility to,
That gives enough.
Well, the first note, if it's the first note, it's the master plan. That means I gotta come up with a master plan first. So that'll take forever, because what Packers will be asking for is a minimalist approach. That, look, we're so unique, you don't need to put down all these regulations on us. And that's, and we're just, I don't believe we're gonna
Ever
come to an agreement on that. I just don't believe that's going to happen.
Right.
So it's back to, we're back to the Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals.
So do they need to come up with a master plan, or does the one already exist?
not one that I'm aware of.
Oh, okay. I was
No, we
thinking
don't
of
have a
city
master plan. We've got these site plans, we got
Okay.
site plans, we don't have, the master plan is, hey, well, how's that whole thing gonna look in 20, 30, 40 years? Well, that's where I'm at, the minimalist type of thing. That's just not gonna happen. It's just, the master plan is not gonna happen. The site plans are already there on every piece that's on that property, and it's, for the most part, Lambeau Field is fully developed, and, that we might have some odds and ends that come in, but when they do come in, we'll be back.
I hate to go against what the city planners and our city attorney recommend, because they're very good, and the city's really on an excellent run for making changes. However, I do support the second bullet in this case. I think it would simplify things greatly, and it's a sign. It's a sign. And
Can I recommend that if you're going to use, if you're going to go with the site plan, we just change that first one from master plan to site plan, so that we maintain consistency with what's already in the ordinance?
That makes sense.
Yes, yes, thank you.
So let me just make sure I understand. So,
Shall be established through the approval of a site plan.
so does that mean there won't be an issue with an accessory building? Or if we amend a site plan from time to time? I mean, that's the language that I'm trying to say, look, the other, if that's the case, if those are fine, I'm okay with the language as long as I don't get something, next time I submit something that's not directly connected with Lambeau Field, well, we're back to square one.
I defer to Paul on how that'll
I'm not sure I'm following, just regarding.
Well,
signage or-
see, the language that changes then, I've put in related accessory buildings, i.e., you know, if, like,
Tailgate.
the tailgate village, I mean, that's the tailgate village, or some building that's not directly connected with Lambeau Field. And then I've also put in the site plan, approval of the site plan as amended from time to time, which, you know, if we come back and I get back to the 13804D, that if I make a change, is that okay? And if it's not, then I'm looking at, because I really don't want to go through the discussions again. I'd prefer to just take care of it.
I wouldn't consider the tailgate village to be an accessory use. I think it's a principal use on that property.
Okay.
I mean, obviously much smaller, but it's
Okay.
not a garage, it's not a
Okay.
storage, it's, you know, a facility for entertaining, so.
If I could have the minutes reflect that that planning at this time doesn't consider the
Tailgate.
tailgate village an accessory building, I'm probably okay with then changing the first bullet point to the development of its
Site plan.
Site plan, sure.
I think if the planning commission's gonna consider that, you may wanna have more oversight. Maybe you wanna see those, not just staff looking at those, but having those come back before the planning commission, possibly at the council. Because we will have nothing to base a recommendation on necessarily outside of being subjective, I guess, so. We feel more comfortable bringing that back to you, you can take a look at it and make a recommendation to the council, I guess, if you wish to do that.
I think it makes a whole lot of sense if you were to say, through the approval of the site plan by the Plan Commission and City Council. You know, right now, we've got a really good working relationship, but you never know. Somewhere down the line, there could be an issue. There could be something that, you know, that the Packers, that the leasee wants to do, and, you know, we have to have some amount of oversight by the city. I don't think we have to be overly bureaucratic about it, but there's got to be some oversight.
So the way I see this reading is change the master to site, and then comma, subject to approval of the plan commission and common council. Well, yeah, a common council.
Right.
It'll go to the plan commission first, because otherwise then there's confusion as to whether plan commission would have some veto power over the council, and I don't think that works either. Subject to approval of the common council.
Yeah. Doable?
This works for me.
Motion to approve with all the amendments we just added?
Can I ask a question of Paul first? You were uncomfortable with the site plan verbiage in that. Does that make you feel better about that at
I'm
all?
not feeling very good, no. Well, I think what that does, it takes some pressure off the staff. I mean, it's rather subjective for us to say what looks good or doesn't look good. I think that comes back to this body, you can decide for yourself, or, you know, what that looks good or not. Again, there's no standards here, the door's kind of wide open. There could be a 100-foot tall sign, there could be a small wall sign. And those would have to come back, and you're gonna have to judge, you know, the quality or the aesthetics of those.
I think to your point, and one of the things, you know, in looking to find this balance is, if one, I think if we do go through, I agree, you know, with Paul, and that is, you know, taking the pressure off of staff, and then having a pure process for it to go through, where it's plan commission, council that looks and reviews on its merits, because in this case, I mean, the merits aren't really defined. And so I think it's important that there's some type of check or balance on it to go through and review these things. You know, I think the one thing that we've talked about, and just, you know, making this decision that Plan Commission should be comfortable with, is opening the door to other entities who may want this type of exemption. I know there's only one Lambeau in the city, but just, you know, from a legal perspective, I just want to make sure that we're cognizant, just kind of eyes wide open, if we're gonna go down a path where we do allow for this. It may come up in other situations. Hospitals, you know, ones where we've talked about some of this before. And if planning commission's comfortable doing that, I mean, that's a policy choice, and we'll implement those choices. I just think that's just something to go in, that we should be aware of.
Thank you. We need to return to regular order of business. Thank you.
Move to return to regular order of business.
And do we have a motion on the floor?
I'll second that.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm gonna go opposed. Yes, nay.
Thank you. Now, this next moves to City Council.
City Council, yeah.
And this will be, because it's ordinance change, this will be a 3 reading.
2.
Oh, 2. So
Technically 2.
it'll go to council March 7th, then probably be advanced final reading on March 21st.
Sounds good. Thank you much.
Thank you. Thank you. Item number 2, consideration with possible action on the request to rezone 606 South Broadway from general commercial light industrial to office residential, submitted by Pastor Manuelis Rico.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request to rezone 606 South Broadway. That's the property highlighted in red here. The Fox River, just off the map a little bit, West Mason Street, Broadway, of course, running north and south, Clinton, Commission Court, just really right adjacent to the Tillman Bridge. This is the former site of the White Store building from years ago. It's currently vacant on the first floor. The second and third floors have the Brown County Health Department located there at their offices. The city's comprehensive plan recommends medium to high intensity retail, office, and housing. It's kind of a transitional area almost between part of the downtown and then some lower density residential to the west. This is the current zoning. It's got some split zoning on it. The eastern half is a light industrial, and the rear half is general commercial or C1. There are a variety of zonings in this area. We've got some downtown, additional light industrial, some R1 again further to the west. This request has been made to facilitate a potential shelter facility at this site. The Transformation House currently operates at 436 South Jefferson Street. The intention here is for the applicant who's considering purchasing the property and relocating that shelter facility to this site. For this review, whoops, we were missing some standards. I apologize for that. There's some information we'd like from the applicant regarding the property itself and how the building's going to be used. And I kind of detailed some of that in the agenda, but failed to put it on the screen here. But that's for conditional use. I'm sorry. So for this request, this is a rezoning request from the C1 and light industrial to the office residential. So our staff is supporting that request. There's a secondary request for conditional use permit. That's the next item. So we are supportive of this request. We did notify the affected property owners. Talked to Alderman Zimmer about this request, and there's been no comments or questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Well, is it appropriate to zone it and then deal with the conditional use later, or do we want to deal with both of those issues at the same time?
Well, there's 2 separate requests. They came in together. We're taking them as 2 separate items. It's appropriate to recommend approval of the rezoning. That's this item here. That's consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and the future growth in that area. So we're supporting that request. However, we do have some questions on the conditional use permit request.
It's kind of okay to get the cart before the horse.
Well, right, so we need this rezoning in place first to consider the conditional use permit.
Thank you. We do have some people here who would like to speak.
Move to suspend the rules.
Second. Thank you. Seth Lenz?
My questions are more about the conditional use permit. So-
Okay, thank you. And Pastor, would you like to speak at this time or on the next one? Okay.
The conditional use.
All right, thank you. And then George Thompson, you would not like to speak? Okay. Still, okay, thank you. All right. So we could return?
Back to regular order.
Second.
Thank you.
Does the current owner want, let's say the conditional use wasn't approved, does the current owner still want it rezoned, or how does that play in?
The applicant has an accepted offer to purchase on the property. I can't speak for the current property owner at this point.
Okay.
I believe it's currently owned by a bank right now. It's been foreclosed upon.
Thank you.
Paul?
And-
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Does either action, this request or the next one, have any effect on the Brown County Health Department offices?
Not that I'm aware of. I think the applicant can speak to that, but I think they have some longer-term leases that they've set up with them, so I think they'll remain in place. So they would simply occupy the first floor of that building.
Okay, thanks.
Are we still on track for a baseball stadium to go around there?
That is an option, yes. I don't know if I have a great amount of details to provide, but the shipyard development is proposed on this site here, basically kind of across the street, the slip site and the Mason Street Bridge. So this is the location here. That's still in progress, I believe.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we'll go on to item number 3. Consideration with possible action on the request to authorize a conditional use permit for a shelter facility proposed at 606 South Broadway, submitted by Pastor Manuelis Rico.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These are the points I was looking for. So this is a request for conditional use permit that's going to be subject to the rezoning you just recommended. Again, the Transformation House is on South Jefferson. They'll be relocating their operation to this site at 606 South Broadway. In looking at the request, there's some concerns that we have about the building and the site that we want clarified that we don't have answers from the applicant. I can just kind of briefly run through some of those. Number 1, a site plan that addresses parking demands for the current and proposed uses, as well as any site improvements or modifications. It's very typical to ask for a site plan as part of a conditional use permit. Second point is a building plan that shows proposed improvements to the structure and steps that will be taken to upgrade the building to be code compliant. Again, this was a retail building at one point. Some of the offices were converted upstairs. This now will have, I believe, a church facility, a dwelling, and some other offices on the first floor. So we want to know how that's going to be kind of handled through the building code, at least get a general idea of the occupancy of the building. Details regarding any exterior improvements to the facade of the building. Again, we want to know about the look and feel of that structure from the outside. Another point, the anticipated building occupancy, as I mentioned before, as well as a maximum number of sheltered residents. I don't have that information at this point to, if that's 5 or 15 or how many individuals might be staying there. And again, the separation of some of those uses on the first floor we'd like to know about. And this property is also located within a floodplain, and that provides some limitations on the structure and the improvements that can be made. So we'd like to see some sort of plan provided that gives some guidance about how they're going to remodel the structure and how they're going to handle the floodplain issues that are currently in place. So we're recommending this item be tabled at this point and looking for additional information on these points here from the applicant.
Thank you. Other questions for Paul? Okay, we do have people here to speak on this, as you know.
Move to suspend rules.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Lenz, how about if you come on up, please, and ask us your questions, and
Sure.
we'll answer whatever we can up here, and then anything we can't answer when it's the pastor's turn to speak, he'll come up.
Yeah, and that's most of the questions. My name is Seth Lenz. I own the building directly across the street on Clinton Street, 416 to 424. I purchased it 3 years ago. It's divided into 3 units, and I've been working on making it a nicer building with storefronts and usable space down there. I guess most of my questions are for the pasture, sorry. And then same thing, how many people are gonna be staying in there? Is it gonna be families, single men, single women, things like that to consider? Is there gonna be any restrictions on if felons or sex offenders can stay down there?
Paul, can you answer any of those?
I would defer to the applicant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, does the city have any restrictions on types of clientele?
Well, sexual offenders have to register with the city and go before the board. I'm not aware of any other requirements necessarily outside of that.
All right, another question is, if the conditional use is granted, is there any way to retract it if there starts to be problems around the neighborhood or in the facility or things like that?
Yeah, we typically build in a clause in the CUP that could, if there's significant zoning violations or police calls, we can.
Yeah, like nuisance,
We
public
come back
nuisance?
before the planning commission, and they can consider that. It's an action the planning commission and council would have to take to revoke the license.
Okay, all right. And then how long is the permissional use granted for usually? Is it forever or?
Not forever, no.
Okay.
Once this is recommended by, or approved by the council, then they have 1 year to establish that use.
Okay,
If that use is vacant for more than 1 year, the CUP goes away.
okay, all right. That's all I had. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate what you guys do for the city.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I do have a question about the CUP now. And it left me. But it was about, if the property gets sold, does the CUP then end?
It's probably how we would structure the CUP. We don't have a recommendation tonight, but that would be a consideration. And we'd tie it to the transformation house and the operating plan that's been provided, which is also included within your agenda. Right, so if that use were to change hands, we'd ask them to come back to the planning commission for review.
Thank you. Okay, Pastor.
So the Transformation House been operating since January 2012, 436 South Jefferson, and there was some issues also getting approved to do what we do there at that time. But since then, the residents in the area has come back and apologized, and welcome us in the neighborhood. In order for men to enter the Transformation House, number one, they have to be really ready to get their life changed around. It's structured, accountability. We we have classes, counseling. We have budget counseling. We are right now getting ready to bring on another certified LDA counselor. But we don't tolerate any type of loud, crazy noise or anything. We have a designated area for smoking. The guys have to keep the outside as well as the inside cleaned up. As far as the layout on inside, we had an architect start to work on to actually laying out everything, but the zoning issues had to be dealt with. So now we are going to have the architect come back in, and I know that we have to put in a sprinkler system. There's a couple of few windows we have to put in. But we had the building inspected, and overall the building is a good sound building. Yeah. So.
Thank you. In terms of clientele and things like that, are there what were the sex offenders that are allowed to live there?
Sex offenders, they would have to go through the council, the board, or whatnot, and certain classes would not be tolerated. And then now it's getting ready to put a park across the street, And just like where we at now, there's a park and a school. So certain offenders, as far as sexual won't be able to move in. But as far as individuals' backgrounds, other than that, we don't hold that against them.
As long as they're willing to improve their lives and change.
Right. Yes.
And your clientele, is it male, co-ed?
Total male.
Male.
Male only. No.
Okay, just,
I should probably know this, but is Transformation House Inc., is that a nonprofit
Yes, it is.
corporation as such?
Yes, it is.
And the question was asked before about, would the health department be staying in there, or what do you have long-term plans? beyond
Yes,
this?
we have long-term plans to be in there. Yeah.
was not the WIC offices on the first floor at some point?
Yes.
And they're gone now?
No, we are giving them 6 to 8 months to relocate.
Okay.
So are you going to have anything that's in there now relocate at some point?
We don't need the top 2 floors. All we need is that lower area, and then there's another building built onto it, that right there, and then it's used to be an old nightclub in there at one time. We're gonna convert that into like a sanctuary.
Any more questions? Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Okay.
Are we returning to regular order?
So moved?
Second.
Thank you.
And request is to table.
Well, I think the recommendations of our staff are good ones. Let's get more information here on, how the parking will work, how the floodplain issues will impact it. I think we have to approve specific number of occupancy, right?
Yes.
So make a motion to table it as the staff recommended in order to gather that information.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for coming in, and will this be back the next time, do you think? Well, you need to talk to the city staff and get that all arranged as far as what information they need.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for the good work you do.
Oh, thank you.
Item number 4.
For the next one?
Yes, we will.
Yeah, all right.
Noise again, yeah.
All right.
Thank you for coming in. Consideration with possible action on the request by Alderman Randy Scannell and Alderman Guy Zima to rezone from OR to R1 and change the land use from low-medium density to low density in the area from West Mason Street and Kellogg Street and Ashland Avenue to Chestnut Avenue. Recommendation is to receive and place on file.
So moved.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Director's update.
All right, council actions. At our last meeting, we took the rezoning for the first reading, the Berlin Road, approved the CUP, but took the first reading for the rezoning there. Issued the CUP for Winford Avenue, the ADP for Raccoonberry Way, and then the one other planning ordinance, the official map for Reggie Whiteway and Legends District to get moved forward. So that's the update. It came up a little earlier before, just a question about the shipyard on this proposal. We've been continuing to work with the parties. We had the term sheet last October, putting the pieces together to come forward with some agreements in terms of getting numbers together. We've been working due diligence and environmentals for the site, working with the parties to put the agreements together and how that will be structured, and also some additional development projects with the hope that in the coming weeks here, we'll start rolling some of those things out through redevelopment authority.
Great. That's exciting. It is.
Very.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Gee, it's quieter in Jersey.
Swift.